Cult of Mac's WWDC coverage is sponsored by MacPaw, makers of Clean My Mac X. What's going on, everybody? Ian here for Cult of Mac, and Apple just wrapped up their 2020 WWDC virtual keynote and introduced a bunch of really cool things coming to their platforms over the next few months that'll be out officially for the public this fall. And it all started with iOS. Now, obviously, with iOS being the most widely used platform that Apple offers, iOS 14 got a lot of love at the keynote, and it all started with a new visual refresh that includes kind of a rethought home screen and widget experience that brings widgets actually directly to the home screen of the device. Now, basically, this means that you can have apps and widgets all coexisting on your home screens, as well as the addition of a new app library screen all the way at the far end, which is just a way to organize all of the apps on your device, similar to what you see on other mobile operating systems, but it's a quick way to see everything. You can scroll through it in a giant alphabetized list, and it makes it quick and easy to find the apps you're looking for without having to dig through multiple screens of apps or dig into folders to figure out where that app lives. Now, with widgets on iOS, you actually can place those directly on your home screen right next to your apps. You get a couple different size grids that can fill up your screen and offer context into different apps or services that you have on your device and make it quick and easy to see information at a glance without having to actually dive into an app. It's really convenient. It's the things that you always looked for in Today View, but now on the home screen where you're looking all the time. There are also some updates to Siri in iOS and iPadOS this year, with a big visual redesign being the key portion of it. Now, instead of a full screen thing that completely disrupts whatever app you're in, Siri is now just a little bubble in the corner of your device and will prompt information in little cards from there. And ultimately, it just makes Siri more minimal and more compact and less obnoxious or annoying. On top of that, Siri also gets some new data sources, providing more information from, again, a wide range of sources that make it smarter and more functional and more useful for more things. Messages also got some updates in iOS 14, making it a little more functional, a little more useful for a bunch of things. First off, you now have pinned contacts inside of messages, which allow you to basically put certain people or groups at the top of your message threads, so they're always there and quickly available. And on top of that, you also get new threaded responses in group messages, meaning that if somebody says something in a group thread, you can respond to that specific message and kind of make a little branched conversation from that one message. So if there's different conversations happening inside of a larger group message thread, you can keep those specific little conversations together. There are also some changes to maps on iOS 14, which bring things like cycling directions, which is something that people have been asking for a long time, as well as the ability to plan your routes or plan your trips by car based on electric charging stations, which is nice. It allows you to actually route your trip without having to deal with the range anxiety that people often get with an electric vehicle. CarPlay is also getting an update in iOS 14 with new backgrounds, which is a nice way to kind of spice up CarPlay a little bit or make it fit in better with your car's interior instead of just a bright or dark background, as well as the addition of a couple new app types. Apple also shut off their brand new digital car key feature, which is great if you own or will own a 2021 BMW 5 Series for now, but it's a cool feature that allows you to use your phone entirely as your car key. Apple also introduced a brand new App Store feature called App Clips, which are basically these little 10 megabyte or less apps that can run a small segment of an overall app to make something really quick and efficient to do without having to download the entire app. Now, iPadOS was next up on the list, and it also got some small refreshes visually, as well as some changes to the way some apps work or look. Now, first and foremost, widgets have changed on iPadOS just like they have on the iPhone. Now there are these different size context boxes that make it really convenient to see maybe a small widget for something that doesn't need a lot of space and a bigger widget for something that does. On top of that, certain apps got refreshed looks like photos and music, which now look more like native iPad apps instead of just a blown up version of what you see on the iPhone. Search also got improved on iPadOS with now universal search, which means you can search not only for apps on your device or for contacts on your device, but you can search for things within files, within notes, within other apps on the system, so you can get to certain pieces of information from those apps, all from search. And the search box has actually changed its overall look and feel to be more like Finder and less like the Spotlight search we've grown accustomed to on iOS. iPadOS also got a brand new scribble mode, which allows you to take your Apple Pencil and the iPad and write out things inside of certain text fields like the Messages app or Safari's address bar, and allow you to use whatever you've written by hand, have it converted into text as your input method instead of trying to type on the touchscreen keyboard or with a smart keyboard or some other accessory. AirPods also got a brief mention during the keynote with their new automatic switching, which basically means that as you're listening to something on your phone, when you switch over to your iPad and you open up a video, your AirPods can automatically switch from your phone to your iPad without having to go in and actually tap through the settings to switch things. And then if you take a call on your phone, your AirPods will automatically switch back to your phone, making it more convenient and more quick to move between your devices. They also added spatial audio to the AirPods Pro, meaning that if you're watching something that's encoded with Dolby Atmos or 5.1 or 7.1 surround sound, it will actually image the sound you're hearing with your AirPods Pro to make it sound like you're in a 3D environment. So instead of just left and right, you actually have front to back definition also. Apple Watch is also getting some minor updates this year with some new faces, some new ways to present complications, as well as the ability for complications to be presented in a bunch of different ways for a single app, which is something that's never existed before. Now, other examples of this, they basically showed like a surfing watch face that would show the current water temperature as well as the swell, or a Nike running watch that would show your average pace recently, as well as stats from your last run and your overall activity. They also introduced face sharing to watchOS, meaning that if you design a face on your watch that you really like the look of, you can share it over iMessage or on social media, and others could download that watch face and be prompted to download the associated apps if that's something they wanted to do. The big feature coming to watchOS 7 this year is sleep tracking, which is something that we all kind of expected to see. And basically it works exactly like any other sleep tracking app has worked. It integrates directly in the health app. It's private, it's secure, and it can be really useful when paired with the phone because it'll actually prompt you to prepare to go to bed so that you can get the right amount of sleep. And then in the morning, it'll prompt you to say, this is what your battery's like, this is how much sleep you got last night, and give you an idea of where you are so you know how to plan accordingly for the next day. Apple also took a couple of minutes to talk about privacy because of course they did. And they talked about the new tracking prevention within apps. So if an app is using a third-party thing to collect data on you, it can actually surface that and tell you this app is using a third-party service to collect information, as well as changes to the App Store that'll actually show you the type of information being collected both by an app or by a third-party service before you even download the app, making it so you're more aware of the kind of information an app might want about you. Next up, Apple dove into Home and talked about the HomePod, cameras, lighting, and the main takeaways are basically that lights now have adaptive lighting, basically meaning that during the day they can have a bluer tint, but in the evening they would go to a redder tint to make it less hard on your eyes and make it easier to wind down during the day. They've also added the ability to set activity zones on cameras, meaning that if you have a HomeKit connected camera, you can now say, only show me notifications if it's within this area. You can also now play your HomeKit cameras on your Apple TV, with the Apple TV now supporting picture-in-picture across a ton of services, meaning that you can throw your camera up in the corner while you were watching something else, so you can keep an eye on, say, the kids in the backyard or the person coming to the front door of your house without having to interrupt the show that you're watching. Now, the remainder of the keynote was all about the Mac, which was actually kind of a surprise. But before we get to that, I need to tell you about today's sponsor, Clean My Mac X from MacPaw. Clean My Mac X is an all-in-one utility that takes care of your Mac's health. It's a macOS cleaner, a performance monitor, and a malware remover. And with Big Sur coming out this fall, Clean My Mac X is the perfect tool to clean up the junk on your computer to prepare it for the new version of macOS. On top of freeing up storage space, Clean My Mac X can also free up RAM to maximize your Mac's performance. Whether you're looking to win back some storage space, improve your Mac speed, or keep your system malware-free, Clean My Mac X can help make your Mac feel like the day you bought it. You can get Clean My Mac X on the Mac App Store or from MacPaw's website. Follow the link in the description to get a 30% discount. Terms and conditions apply. My thanks to MacPaw for sponsoring this video and Cult of Mac's WWDC coverage. Now, with macOS Big Sur, Apple introduced a bunch of new visual changes to the OS that really make the Mac feel a little bit more like the iPad. To start, there's a new simplified toolbar in all of your apps, a new look along the sidebars, new menu bar at the top of the screen, just a whole bunch of little touches that look a little more iOS-like. On top of that, Apple has actually redone most of their icons in macOS to make them more like iOS with the rounded rack look. On top of that, macOS is now getting the control center, much like we see in iOS, as well as the updated notification center / widget view that we're seeing on iOS now coming to the Mac, making it more functional, more useful for getting to quick settings and things like that on the Mac. Safari for the Mac also got a little bit of love at the keynote, especially with things like the new extension support, which allows you to take extensions from other browsers like Chrome and bring them into Safari, but not without the Apple Touch. With extensions in Safari, you can actually allow an extension for a set amount of time, and you have to approve it for each site that you're on, meaning that an extension can't just crawl the page you're on and scrape information or send it back for data mining or anything like that, which helps to add privacy and security while also expanding the features of Safari to make it more useful. Now, on top of macOS 11 Big Sur, they've also introduced a new change coming to the Mac later this year with the switch from Intel-based processors to Apple-based processors. Now, if you've been following along, the iPad and the iPhone have these amazing processors that can do a ton. They're very powerful, but they're also very power efficient. And by bringing that same functionality to the Mac, Apple can make more powerful and also more power efficient Macs, meaning that you can get better battery life while still having great performance. On top of that, Apple's actually already rebuilt their own existing apps, both their core apps as well as their pro apps like Final Cut and Logic, into this Apple Silicon architecture, meaning that those apps will be ready to go on day one. On top of that, Apple is also offering a developer kit specifically for certain developers, which is basically a Mac Mini with this new A-series processor in it to start building their apps for the transition. And for the apps that have not been updated yet to support Apple Silicon when that ships in the fall, Apple is already promising Rosetta 2, which is an emulation layer that would actually allow you to run those Intel-based apps on these ARM-based processors, with the apps actually being compiled into this ARM-based version at the time of download or on the fly, depending on what the app needs. Now, that pretty much wraps up the keynote and all the things that were announced today. There was no new hardware to speak of other than the Mac Dev Kit, but there was tons of great software changes and updates. We'll be covering those over the course of the next week or two to really kind of hone in on some of those really big announcements and also take a first-hand dive into some of those platforms. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Let me know what you're most excited about. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of our WWDC coverage or iOS 14, iPadOS 14, watchOS 7 stuff over the summer. I'm Ian for Cult of Mac. I'll catch you guys in the next one.